Now, if we could only get Steph as a special guest, I think our numbers would go up.
Oh, well, that's for sure.
He is so amazing, both on the basketball court and in the community, really doing
So
wonderful
true.
things.
He's doing some amazing things especially for kids, which is so important. It's too bad he moved out of our district.
Yes. Yeah. For now, he may be back.
It's true.
He may be back.
We just got to make sure we keep the A's in the East Bay.
Go Giants. Go Giants.
Okay, well, it looks like it's slowing down. Quite a few of you here, though, so thanks for joining us tonight. Maybe you're having your dinner with us. Awesome. Senator, you want to get us started?
Terrific. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Senator Steve Glazer, and I'm very happy to be here with the Assemblywoman Rebecca Bauer-Kahan. And, we wish we could be there in person. We've done these together in person, but tonight it's a virtual town hall.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I've said that now, I think 3 times, but I mean it. So I'm Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Kahan, and before we get started, we wanted to let you know a few things. One is if you want or need closed captioning, that's available to you right here in Zoom. So you just want to click on the icon with the 2 CCs in the toolbar. And if you have the latest Zoom, that should be available, and we'll provide closed captioning throughout the event, which may help some of our participants. Second, the Senator and I are going to begin by doing a brief presentation around what's happening both here in the district and up in Sacramento, but afterwards we'll be doing Q&A, and we would love for you to participate in that. And you can do so by putting your question into the Q&A function. And I probably can promise we won't get to all the questions, but I also can promise we will do our best. So just put them in there and we'll get to as many as we can. Now back to you, Senator.
Thank you, Assemblymember. I represent the 7th Senate District. On your screen are the wonderful cities that make it up, both in Contra Costa and Alameda counties. I chair 2 committees in the Senate, the Elections and Constitutional Amendments Committee and the Select Committee on Student Success. In addition, I serve on the Agricultural Committee, Education, Governmental Organization, Insurance, and the Joint Legislative Audit Committee. Before I served in the legislature, I served on the Orinda City Council for 10 years, three terms as mayor. I've married a wonderful wife, Melba, and 2 daughters. Both attended all the public schools here in the area. And it is such an honor to represent this terrific Senate district.
Well, he covered his district. Our districts are fairly similar, although his is twice the size. So I represent half of the senator's district, and you can see the cities there on the screen that I represent. And it really is an incredible district. We have engaged constituents who care deeply about our community. And both of us have had the opportunity to experience that in many capacities. So thank you for being the incredible community that you are. Up in Sacramento, I serve on 5 committees. You see them on the screen: banking and finance, environmental safety, privacy and consumer protection, public safety, and utilities and energy. I also chair the Select Committee on Reproductive Health, which is obviously an incredibly important topic right now that I know we'll cover during this town hall. And lastly, I'm the Assistant Speaker Pro Tem, so I get to run the assembly floor, which is quite the adventure and the honor. And of course, my most important day job and night job and full-time job is mom of 3 who are here, students thriving back in school, and my husband and I live here in Orinda. So thanks for being with us. A little bit about what I've accomplished in the last year. And much of this is done in partnership with the senator. We have had the privilege of serving together and working as partners for now 3 years and counting. So, we have worked together on legislative and budget wins. This year, I was able to secure funds for several local projects right here in our community, which is something that we work hard on, is to deliver for you locally, whether it be for specific projects to ensure clean waterways or safe routes to schools. We're bringing those dollars here to make those projects happen. Open space is a critical piece of work that we do, and I was able to secure funds to expand open space as well. Legislatively, we did a lot of good work on, updating the code to be more inclusive, ensuring that our documents are inclusive of all people, including non-binary individuals. We did some interesting work in the criminal justice system, ensuring that youth in our system are treated fairly and able to get an appeal on the decision to send them to adult court. We protected small businesses with a piece of legislation that allows for free mediation for any business that is having trouble with paid family leave, and for the workers to ensure they can get access to paid family leave, which is so critical right now with our worker shortage, that both the workers and the businesses are protected in that important leave. We did consumer protection legislation, and very importantly, we did legislation to protect the patients and workers at our reproductive health clinics. That's a problem we see right here in Walnut Creek. And I wanted to make sure that we were protecting those people who are exercising their important constitutional rights. So that's a little bit about the victories we had, but one I want to talk about before I turn it over to the senator was an incredibly important joint win that we had long before my time in the legislature, but during my 3 years there, we've been working to protect this beautiful piece of land, Tesla Park, and this year we were able to secure through the budget the money to protect the land in perpetuity and provide for a new state park right in our own backyard, which is very, very exciting. And we did that with an incredible coalition of environmental groups and community groups, and we're excited to share that with you in the coming years.
Yeah, I love that picture. I love that picture. And it's that was a nice memory of the work we did together, Assemblywoman, and bring it across the finish line. As you said, so many people worked so hard over many years to try to protect it, and we finally made it happen. And it's going to be there forever. So a great exclamation point of our year was that happening at the end. Well, I wanted to mention a couple things that I was pleased that we were able to accomplish this year. We had 5 bills signed into law by the governor. One of them gave cities new tools to ensure that house parties in short-term rentals do not get out of hand. This legislation was prompted by this terrible tragedy in my own hometown of Orinda on that Halloween night, where 5 people were killed at a rental Airbnb home. So new tools have been put into law to help cities control that. In my district, I have more than 50 wineries. That's a lot. Many people don't know that, both in the East County and also in the Livermore area. Wonderful place to tour and taste. Many of them are small wineries, and they have struggled in this economic climate. And we were able to get legislation through this year that allowed them to open up an additional tasting room as an opportunity to share their wonderful beverages with communities near and far. I was also able to, I was a co-author of a measure with the Assemblywoman, signed into law to designate the Tri-Valley, San Joaquin Valley Regional Rail Authority as a rail transit district. And it would allow it to authorize transit connectivity between BART and the Altamont Corridor Express commuter rail service. That congested 580 is just crazy, and we're always looking for ways to try to improve that for all the traveling public. I was able to work with the State Department of Parks and Rec to provide funds for the construction of many bike turnout lanes on Mount Diablo to improve safety and allow motorists to ascend and descend the mountain more quickly. That's such a beautiful outing, if you haven't done it recently, to go to the top of Mount Diablo. And we're trying to make it as safe as we can. Finally, we were able to secure funds in the budget for our local food bank here in Contra Costa, and also for the Monument Crisis Center in Concord, 2 really wonderful endeavors that our community is very engaged in, that we were able to get resources for. So there's some summary of some of the things that we've done: constituent casework, community recognitions, roundtables with community leaders, all things that I so enjoy and allow me to be as engaged as I can with our community. So we're going to now cover 4 issue areas. We're already seeing some questions coming in on the chat and prior to our virtual meeting tonight. So we're going to cover some of the things in which people have asked us about. Those areas are COVID and health, education, environment, and wildfire. And I think we're going to start with the Assemblywoman to kick us off there.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, so obviously COVID and the healthcare response and the response to the economic impacts of the pandemic have been top of mind for us as a legislature, in part because I know that both of us are constantly focused on the toll that this virus has taken on our community, be it the lives lost or the impacts to women in the workforce and our local small businesses. We really want to do everything we can to make sure we come through this pandemic as strong as possible. And so we've worked really hard on that. The state has funded $4 billion in grants to small businesses and our small nonprofit cultural institutions that were struggling. We knew that some of the health steps that we took to keep everyone safe were affecting those vibrant communities, and we wanted to do our part to protect them. The recovery budget included $1.5 billion for the California Jobs Initiative and workforce development, including multiple grants to support our arts and education institutions. We need to get people working, and we want to get them trained for great jobs where they can earn a living wage. So that was a really exciting opportunity to do just that. And I can tell you that I was just with the Women's Caucus, and we remain focused on getting women back into the workforce and retrained and upskilled to make sure they have a family wage. We also focused on preventing homelessness. Homelessness is an incredible crisis, and we knew the pandemic could exacerbate it. So we had the opportunity to provide relief in the form of $2.6 billion that came from the federal government that we could give to individuals to make sure they stayed housed. And also we had an opportunity to house the unhoused individuals in our community through Project Roomkey, putting individuals up in hotels and watching our county provide wraparound services, which really has been an amazingly successful program. And we hope we can do more to solve California's homelessness crisis. On the healthcare front, we obviously had a lot to pay attention to in ensuring that our community had access to meaningful and robust healthcare despite the pandemic. One of the aspects of healthcare that is top of mind for me, and I'm sure many of the people on this webinar, is reproductive health. We know that it's at risk right now. I just held a committee hearing on how reproductive health was affected by the pandemic. And the shortages of staff at our hospital has affected reproductive health just like it has everything else. So last year I carried a bill, as I mentioned, that would protect the safety and security of those who seek reproductive health care and those who provide it. It's really, really critical that we provide comprehensive health care. And sometimes that means protecting the safety of those involved. We also focused on mental health. Mental health was something that plagued people even more during the pandemic. It was a crisis prior to the pandemic, and we know it got worse. So my office launched an effort to create a mobile crisis response phone line for people who need mental health services and access into our mental health system so they can get the care and help they need. And this is an ongoing effort. We as a state need a robust mental health infrastructure from the bottom up, and we're going to work to make that stronger and build it. So a lot of work went into that, but there's even more, and I'll turn it over to the senator to add.
Yeah, we did a few other things that you've already explained. Many of the things that we worked on, but we also were able to secure $6.2 billion in tax relief for small businesses that receive Paycheck Protection Program loans. Also able to provide license renewal fee waivers for heavily impacted businesses like restaurants, beauty shops, barber shops, and also we provided direct financial and rent relief for Californians. We passed bills that focused on enhancing healthcare delivery, ensuring healthcare access and coverage, improving protections, and improving health equity. We invested more than $4 billion over the next 5 years to create a new behavioral health system for youth from birth to age 25. We know that these circumstances that we're in, as the Assemblywoman has said, has created great stresses and strains on everyone, including our children. We expanded funding for telehealth. I mean, I did my doctor's appointment through telehealth. I don't know, Assemblywoman, if you did the same. It's not the best situation, but we want to make sure that where telehealth is used, that they get fully reimbursed for that as it would be for an office visit. And we've also expanded our remote care and senior nutrition programs. We passed a bill requiring health plans and insurers to cover the costs associated with COVID-19 testing, as well as immunization and healthcare services related to testing with no cost sharing required, no prior authorization required. This is going to prevent any surprise billing for so-called administrative fees or out-of-pocket costs that many people who are seeking COVID-19 prevention previously experienced. And we know, as the Assemblywoman has said, there's much more that we need to do to protect Californians. We've taken some important steps to reduce costs and provide care during these difficult times, but we know there's more to be done. Okay, with that, we're going to switch topics, excuse me, to education. Another area, a very important area that the state engages in. Half our budget is focused on education for good reason. And we made record investments in our schools this year, $94 billion. That's roughly about $21,600 per pupil. That's an increase of about $1,500 per student from the previous year. We also created the nation's first free breakfast and lunch program for all students. Beginning in 2022, all public schools will provide 2 free meals per day to any student who requests a meal. Now, we've, as many parents who are on this Zoom know, in-person learning was not something that we could assure throughout the course of this year. It raised some incredible inequity issues in terms of access to broadband, the ability to connect. The legislature provided $6 billion investment in broadband to help reduce that inequity going forward. Finally, for those of you who have kids in school or at the university, you know that our facilities are not as up to snuff as they should be. Both the Assemblywoman and I are trying to advance bond money for the construction and modernization of those facilities. Importantly, in the higher education space, we were able to add 15,000 seats for California students at both the UC and the CSU. There's been a lot of impaction in that space. Higher education is an incredible economic ladder up for so many, and our funding this year allowed for that expansion of spots. And we've also invested $2 billion to increase affordable housing for our university students. There's impaction on a lot of our campuses for student housing, affordable student housing, and we have taken steps not only to provide the money, but to press the education systems to come forward with their long-term housing plans so we can avoid that problem down the road.
Yeah. And as a mom who lives California's public schools every day, I think education is so critical to the success of our children, to their health and well-being, and to the future of California's economy. So I think it's so critical that we continue to invest in our education system in the important ways that the senator has mentioned. That increase in seats for California students is exciting. We need to continue to invest in our future. One thing that I wanted to add on about was early childhood education, which was an incredible focus of the legislature this year, was to increase access to early childhood education. And that means childcare, but also transitional kindergarten and basically pre-kindergarten education. Childcare is really critical because during the pandemic, we saw many women leave the workforce and they have not returned in the numbers that we would have hoped. And so we need to provide childcare, meaningful childcare, so that women can get back into the workforce and regain ground on that equity that we lost during the pandemic. So we increased the number of slots, and we also are working to increase the amount that we pay for those slots so that it is a living wage job, so that our childcare workers can afford to keep open the doors for the people who need it. In addition, this year, we passed transitional kindergarten for all 4-year-olds in California. This is so incredibly important. We know it is one of the most impactful things we can do for the success of kids in education and in school. It will change their future. It will change the school to prison pipeline. And now we're providing it to every California student in the coming years. The means by which we will do that is going to continue to be discussed. And I think it's an important thing for us to figure out how to do it successfully and provide a quality TK education for all Californians. But we have now made that commitment and we will be doing it. And I think it's a really exciting step. But as all of you know, I was, for those parents on the call, I was with you during that distance learning for a year, watching my kids suffer. And I'm just so glad they're back in the classroom and they are getting the education they need. And we will continue to support our schools to provide quality education to our students, to keep them safe. As we've seen, they've been able to be safe in these months since they went back to school, and we know that they're thriving. So we will continue to ensure that that happens. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the environment. Climate change and the environment is something that our district cares deeply about, and for a lot of reasons. My kids are one reason I care deeply about it. This is their land for the future, and we need to make sure that they can breathe and drink water and all of the important things that the environment provides. So this year we are going to we introduced legislation last year, but we'll continue the work on it to curb the use of neonicotinoids. It actually made the press last week, and I was really excited about it because most people can't even pronounce neonicotinoids. But it is an important thing because that's what's leading to colony collapse of our bees. And biodiversity is critical for this, for our food supply and for the health of our ecosystems. And so we're going to protect those pollinators this year. And it's really, really critical. I sit on the utilities committee, and one of the things we're really focused on is how can we get to our clean energy and clean transportation future, which means moving to ensure we have offshore wind, we increase access to solar energy, and that hydrogen is a part of the equation. We've continued to double down on a future for clean transportation, both through public transit, but also through the vehicles that we will be driving in the future. And our grid needs to be able to sustain that. It is something that we're incredibly focused on, is if we put more electric vehicles on the grid, we have to ensure our grid is strong enough to maintain the capacity. We worked on clean water and clean air this year, making sure that those hardest hit by the drought had the resources they need, and investing in emissions reductions in the communities that are hardest hit by air pollution. We allocated billions of dollars to fund programs for climate resiliency, biodiversity conservation, equitable access to wildland, and sustainable agriculture. The drought is still here, as we are all very well aware, and there is a drought emergency statewide, and we continue to be focused on how we can conserve water, keep our water clean, and improve water capture here in California. So we continue to look at how we can do more on climate change because we need to. And the wildfires are one example of why we need to. We see it right here in our own backyards when we can't go outside. So that's why we're doubling down on all of these really important issues. And we're going to continue to fight for Valley Link, which is an important clean transportation project right here in our backyard. I want everyone to know that we are focused on this. We are moving as quickly as we can to protect our planet and our future. Senator?
Well, as the Assemblywoman has said, these last few years have been very difficult ones for our California environment and the natural world more broadly. We face catastrophic, record-breaking wildfires, which we're going to talk about in a couple minutes, drought, climate change. And both of us, as big environmental stewards, we're going to continue to make efforts to protect our clean air and water, our bays, our forests, our grasslands, wetlands, and creeks, certainly the Delta. And as I like to say, the environment should be part of every discussion we have in the legislature. I'm pleased to tell you that the legislature and Governor Newsom made the largest ever investment in California's climate future. We approved over $13.5 billion to support drought response, develop long-term climate resilience strategies, and support environmentally friendly agriculture. To protect our communities from pollution, this year the legislature passed legislation that will protect our food, our health environment by banning the use of toxic chemicals in paper-based food packaging and requiring disclosure of these chemicals in our cookware. We also passed legislation to reduce single-use plastic. I co-authored legislation to require businesses to be honest to consumers about the recyclability of their products. A lot of times that recycling, chasing arrows, does not mean it's really recyclable. And we took action this year to prevent the producers from putting that recycling symbol if it's not really available for people to recycle. We want to make sure that the products that you put in your blue bins are actually recyclable, rather than making their way to a trash heap or in some cases to the Pacific Ocean. My colleagues and I passed legislation to create a registry of projects that sequester carbon, mitigate the impact of sea level rise, gradually eliminate harmful emissions from small engines, and reduce single-use plastic waste. And as we prepare for the upcoming legislative session, we'll continue to focus on improving drought preparedness, climate resiliency, water availability, and of course, access to nature for all communities through preservation and protection of those wildlife, those wild lands. So a lot of good things happening. but we know a lot more to be done. All right, I mentioned wildfires earlier. We're going to switch to that. Unless you're sleeping under a rock, you know that we've had just a terrible wildfire seasons for the last couple years. 6 of the 7th largest fires have occurred in the last 2 years. So this year, we did allocate $500 million in emergency spending for wildfire prevention. The budget also includes $200 million ongoing annually for wildfire prevention programs. And in addition to that, CAL FIRE has announced that the recipients of its fire prevention grants for 2021, with the largest award in the Bay Area going to the Moraga-Orinda Fire District, which recently completed a major CAL FIRE funded project in North Orinda. And while it's located in North Orinda, it's going to protect Lafayette and Walnut Creek and Moraga. So it's a wonderful regional project that a lot of money has been put to making better. It's certainly a priority of mine has been to ensure that we train and deploy a workforce that can implement critical vegetation and forest management plans. We know that part of the problem of these wildfires is that we haven't managed our forests very well. To respond to that, I put forward legislation that was referred to as Senate Bill 804, which would have created a Northern California Forest Management Training Center, and it would have trained formerly incarcerated in forestry and vegetation management practices. So the program does these two things. It helps reduce the toll of wildfires, but it also would help reduce recidivism rates, creating a pathway for gainful employment for those who have completed confinement in local jails and institutions. Now, despite the broad support it received in the legislature, it got large support votes in both the Senate and the Assembly, the governor vetoed it over concerns about the budget. But we continue to be in talks with the governor's office. In fact, today, continued those talks with the governor's office. He likes the program. He wants to make sure it fits in with the budget allocation that we did last year and that we're going to be doing this year. So we're going to continue to work on that.
Awesome. So wildfire, it's what keeps me up at night, I'm going to be honest with you. And it's something that we both work on incredibly hard because we want to keep our communities safe. And that is so critical. So, you heard a little bit about the fuel breaks. You see the prescribed fires happening in our community, but we need to do that writ large, both so we aren't breathing air that is toxic. It's not, it is the fastest source of pollution right now is our wildfires. So for climate change purposes, we need to be fighting this. And also obviously for the safety and security of our communities and the communities throughout the state. So how do we do that? You've heard a lot of investments we've made, but one of the things that I've been really focused on is utility caused wildfires. We know that many of the wildfires that have been started have been caused by utilities and utility poles and the failure to do proper management of and mitigation for these things that can cause wildfires. So as a result, I introduced 2 pieces of legislation to focus on exactly that. The first was AB 21, which would give our local district attorneys the power to enforce all of these laws that are on the books that our utilities should be doing to keep our communities safe. And the idea is that it wouldn't just be the PUC that could enforce that, which has a lot on its plate, but instead we'd have someone in our own local community who could make sure that vegetation management and everything that needs to be done to keep us safe is happening. That has been an uphill battle in the legislature, but we will continue to fight for that because I think it's an important solution to that utility caused wildfire issue. In addition, I worked with 2 of our local fire chiefs here in Moraga-Orinda and in San Ramon Valley to take statewide a bill that they have done locally, which would provide notice to our local fire chiefs when the utilities are coming in to do hot work that can spark and cause a wildfire. If it's a red flag day, our fire department should be ready and poised to fight a fire if one breaks out, because time is your safety and your security. So we want to make sure that everybody has access to that information. So we'll continue to work for that notification bill. But another important thing that I did was work with the East Bay Regional Park District to secure $3.5 million to get them a new helicopter to fight wildfire. What many people don't realize is when these large wildfires break out across the state, many of our air resources are deployed to those fires, which means if a small fire breaks out here at our community, we may not have the air resources to fight it, which is critical because again, if we can get those fires out fast, then we're okay. And so the East Bay Regional Park District, which has a firefighting helicopter, does mutual aid in our communities to put out small fires when the air resources are deployed elsewhere. And they needed a new helicopter to do that. So we got it for them. And we hope that that will pay off. We know it will pay off because we will be able to stop those fires fast. And that is the critical work that we do with pre-positioning and deployment. So we're going to continue to keep our eye on how we can do everything we can to protect you, to protect our community, and to move California forward in a way that where we see less impacts from these deadly wildfires.
Assemblywoman, I noticed that in the Q&A that we got a question about fire and equipment. I thought I could answer it here if that's okay with you.
Please.
Dan from Marinda asked about, are we expanding our capacity of firefighting fleets, air support? And my staff, my crack staff has shared with me that in the past year, we've added 12 Sikorsky CAL FIRE Hawk helicopters. And we also put down payments on 7 Lockheed Martin C-130 Hercules air tankers to continue our statewide effort to provide that type of firefighting equipment that can help all of us, including all of us here in our neck of the woods, should a fire break out. So thank you for letting me throw that one in.
Of course, it's a good question. I was talking about air resources because they're really important to making sure we fight fires effectively. So it was a great question. And with that, we're actually going to turn to the Q&A. So it was a perfect transition, Senator. You can see that we're really busy, but really everything we do is to serve each and every one of our constituents. And so with that, we really want to turn to the questions that each of you have. And you have a lot of them, some before, some now. So we will get through, as I said, as many as we can. But the first question that I'm going to turn to is a question from Joan in Walnut Creek. And Joan asks, what is the legislature planning to do about the recent smash and grab looting in our city? And that happened in Walnut Creek, but we know that was not the only city affected by the recent smash and grabs. And Joan says, I want to feel safe while out doing my holiday shopping in my own city. And Joan, we want you to feel safe, and we want the workers to feel safe, and we want our community to be safe. And this is a crime. And it was scary, and we are focused on it and going to continue to work towards it. For those of you that recently saw the New York Times article about federal legislation, this affected California, but it actually happened in states throughout the nation. It's a rising problem. And there was an article in the New York Times recently about how one of the important things that is trying to be done on the federal level is to shut down the marketplace for these goods. So there is an incentive to go and do these smash and grabs, especially at the magnitude that we saw in Walnut Creek recently. Well, the good news is we don't know how that's going in Washington, but that law is actually being moved here in the California state legislature. Senator Nancy Skinner has introduced a bill that would ensure that the tech companies that host these marketplaces where these goods are being sold are identifying these users and working with law enforcement to shut down these marketplaces for the sale of stolen goods. So that's one really important step that California is working on currently and will continue to work on. But importantly, as I said, these are crimes, and we need to ensure that we are enforcing these crimes and that those that do this are held accountable. And we will continue to work as a state to make sure that there's resources both for law enforcement and for our district attorneys to enforce these laws, and that those that do it are held accountable. And we're hopeful that with more enforcement, that we will see some impact of that. But it is something that the legislature is focused on, and we will see more legislation coming out in January focused on it when we get back into session. Anything to add, Senator?
Yeah, no, Joan, thank you for your question. I know a lot of people have that question because it's all very unsettling. And the Assemblywoman did a great job of talking about the different angles that we're pursuing to see if we can try to help this situation. I certainly am supportive of raising penalties for these perpetrators. There are some limits because ballot measures have limited, in some cases, what we can do, but we'll continue to explore ways to make sure there's accountability for these crimes, as well as provide the resources on the enforcement side to hold people accountable, as I said. All right, another question. Lydia from Pleasanton asks, she sees on the TV news other states restricting abortion. Can you tell me what we're doing to make sure that California stays a safe place for women's health? Well, Lydia, thank you for your question. It's an important one. I'll tell you that, I know there's a case before the Supreme Court, but nothing in that case would limit the right of Californians to get reproductive health services, including abortions in our state. California already has a right to abortion in our law, and that is not changing. I know both the Assemblywoman and I have supported legislation to eliminate co-payments and deductibilities charged by insurance companies for reproductive health. That was this year. Wasn't that this year we passed that legislation together? So it's an important right and something that we're going to insist is protected in our state. Assemblywoman, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the senator is absolutely right. We in California have declared ourselves a reproductive health sanctuary state, and we will continue to be that. We will be a place where women, the 20 million-ish women who live in California, will continue to have access to abortion here. But we also are realizing, and we're already seeing based on what's happening in Texas, that we're going to have to do more than that. And in September, the governor formed the Future of Abortion Council, which was an incredible coalition of groups throughout the state of California that work in diverse communities to ensure that we are protecting comprehensive reproductive health care. And they actually just put out their report this week. It was released just Tuesday, I think. And it talks about what we as a state can do to continue to provide comprehensive access here. And there is more we can do. In recent years, we saw counties in California trying to criminalize abortion, and we will make sure that doesn't happen. But also that we ensure that we protect women from out of state who will need access to abortions, even if it is outlawed in their state. And so we're going to do a lot to protect that as well, to make sure we have enough providers. We're already seeing a rise in people coming across our state borders to get access to abortion. And that will only go up if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade in June, or limits Roe v. Wade in really meaningful ways, which I think we anticipate is likely to happen. And we also are doing protections for women, both criminal protections from criminal laws that would criminalize abortion, and also civil laws like we see in Texas to make sure we're protecting women and their assets if they need to choose an abortion. So we are focused on it. You will see legislation coming out of my office and other offices this year to ensure that we are doing everything we can, because not only is abortion healthcare that needs to be protected, but it is also equity, right? We know that control over our own reproductive health is one of the most important things in determining whether women have equity in the workplace and equity in the world. So we will stand for that. And I know that we have amazing partners. The Women's Caucus is focused on it without question, but we also have amazing allies in the legislature, like the senator who I know will stand with women in California and women across the nation, as will be the role moving forward. But I should also add, this is an issue that I get heated about, that although California will do all of those things, and we will continue to be that state, it is better for women to have access to comprehensive health care in their own home state, where they don't have to miss days of work and they don't have to travel and the expense isn't there. But barring our ability to do that, we will continue to be the state that provides that for women. So we got a question about wildfire. We may have already answered this, but I'm gonna just highlight it, and we can add if there's anything to add. But the question, we got a lot of questions about it, asking about the plans the state has to address the climate change and the resulting wildfires. And somebody said we got so lucky this year with fewer PSPS power outages. Oh my gosh, how happy are we that there was less of those? Yeah. And no big smoky fires in our area, but last year was so much worse. What's happening to address the wildfire issues before the next fire season starts and over the long run? And you heard the senator talk a lot about this, but I also spoke a little bit about it. A lot of it is making sure that we are doing what we need to do to get the land ready, right? My son actually came home the other day and said to me, "Mom, why don't we take as good care of the land as the Native Americans did?" And it was a great question. And I think it really hits the nail on the head with this wildfire question, where we have not done the amount of controlled burns we need to be doing in our forests and the national forests, and making sure we're thinning those fuels. And we need to be doing that work now, and we are. And I'll add that we highlighted a lot of what the state's doing, but what's really exciting is in the federal legislation that just came out, there were actually significant resources for federal lands to do wildfire prevention, a lot of which will be coming to California, which is really critical because a lot of our wildlands are federally controlled. And that's something we've been needing to work on over the past few years. And then you heard a little bit about the air resources, something that was done and we continue to support and will continue to support, that has made a huge difference in fighting wildfires, is giving our firefighters the ability to pre-position. So it used to be you could only call firefighters for a mutual aid situation after a fire had broken out, after there was an emergency. And California changed that and made sure that if there was conditions that one believed would perhaps cause a wildfire, they could pre-position firefighters in that area from mutual aid districts and get paid for it. And that's great because, again, when you have firefighters where a fire breaks out, at the moment it breaks out, you are more likely to control it before it gets out of hand. So we continue to work incredibly closely with our fire departments, who are really the heroes in this whole fight, to make sure they have the support they need. We're doing what we can to both fight fires immediately to make sure they don't get out of hand, but also prevent them. And you heard about the great work we're doing on fuel maintenance here in our own community, but that's true throughout the state, and we remain focused on it. Again, this is what keeps me up at night. I'm the mom of 3 kids, and I live on the wildland urban interface as well. So, as does the senator. So we know the fear and the concern. And lastly, and I don't know if we've gotten a question about this yet, but insurance. I know it's something that comes up a lot, is the fact that people are not getting renewed on their insurance when they live in these high fire zones. And that's something that I know both of us and the legislature is incredibly focused on, is how do we protect the insurance markets so that you are getting what you need to be protected in your homes. So one of the things that we have looked at and continue to work on in Sacramento is how do you get credit for the hardening you're doing on your own home and your community is doing. We have incredible communities here who are becoming fire safe and doing the work to be more prepared. And we want that to be reflected both in your ability to remain and get insured, but also in your rates. So that's something you'll see continuing to come your way. Anything to add, Senator?
Well, a couple of things maybe. First, the pre-positioning point that you made is right on, and that actually helped stop a fire before it got out of hand in Moraga. It was because of pre-positioning that the engines were very nearby when that broke out last year. And I guess the second thing would be that we know that the cause of some of these fires were our electrical grid that wasn't protected as it should be. And so the legislature has been putting a lot of pressure on PG&E to make sure that they're hardening their system as fast as they possibly can to prevent fires from being ignited because of downed power lines or transformers sparking, or the various things that have happened that have created some of our worst fires that we have experienced. So we're not letting up, taking the pressure off of PG&E for the responsibility that they have over these wires. Okay, going on with some more questions. Ibrahim from Dublin asked, are you guys doing anything to help restaurants and businesses in my city that closed because of COVID? Well, I mentioned earlier that we have been providing some tax relief for businesses that received the Paycheck Protection loans. We're waiving license renewal fees. We're providing tax credits for rehiring laid off workers. And we know there's more to be done. I feel terrible about my local restaurants and businesses that have shut down. They're trying to get back on their feet, and we're looking for ways to help them. And so it's a continuing challenge for all of us that we are still going through with this pandemic.
Yeah, and I think, dining at our local small businesses and shopping at our local small businesses is something each of us can do, right? The holidays are coming. We're thinking about getting gifts for our families, and we can do that in our own communities. And that's really critical because it does help. It does really help. So I will add that to all of you. But we as a state are also focused and working closely with our local chambers of commerce to listen to them. What do you need? How can we support you? One of the things we're hearing a lot about is worker shortages, right? So I went to the bakery recently that I love to get a croissant, and they were closed because they didn't have enough workers. Well, guess what? If you're paying the high rents that you pay in the Bay Area and you have to close early because you don't have workers to staff, that is money you're not bringing in for your business. And so worker shortages are a really big, important issue that we are working on to figure out how can we be more supportive and helpful in ensuring that our business have the workers that they need, which really gets to a question about commutes and living in our communities, and how do we get more workers, especially at all income levels, to be able to be a part of our community and work in our businesses, because those small businesses are the heart of our community. And I know each and every one of them loves the vibrancy they bring. And we are going to do everything we can. But you've heard a lot about the grants and the other work we're doing. We also just looked at protections we could provide. So one of the bills that I co-authored with Senator Dodd this year was making the cocktails to go last for more years. We know that for restaurants, that was a lifeline to be able to, when people are getting to go, to sell a cocktail with it. They did it safely. It had to be closed and it had to be tamper proof. And then you could bring it home and you could enjoy that cocktail with your meal. And we heard from restaurants that that made a really big difference. And so we continued that. Something else we did was we were hearing that the ability to add additional outdoor dining, right? You could double sometimes the capacity of a restaurant by having indoor dining now and outdoor dining, right? So even though indoor dining had reopened, restaurants needed that outdoor dining to get back on their feet. And so one of the things that we did as a state was ensure that the ability, we control whether you can serve alcohol in those outdoor spaces. And so we extended the ability to do that for more time, again, to get our restaurants back on their feet. So we are in communication with those businesses. What do you need? How can we help? And then we're doing everything we can to help them. But if you are a small business owner and you have something you want us to focus on, be in touch. We really do want to be supportive. You heard about the Senator's Bill for our wineries. We both have the privilege of representing the Livermore Valley and all of its incredible wineries. And for them, opening that second tasting room can be really incredible in terms of revenue, right? So those are small businesses that he helped in that way. So everything we can, and the more we know, the more we can do. So please do reach out if you have ideas.
Assemblywoman, if I could just add two more things. One is, I know we have a lot of local elected officials that tune into our town halls. We can't see them all on our screen, but I just want to say thank you to them for trying to find all ways they can to accommodate our restaurants and other small businesses in their town. A lot of times they need some changes to the rules to allow them to have these spaces. And we really appreciate them going the extra mile as well. And finally, before you click on that internet purchase, think twice. Can I get that down the street? Can I get that at the gift store around the corner, the dress store? I know we love for many, the convenience of ordering online. We understand that, but we've got to help these small businesses. We care about them. We want them to stay in our community. And that means we have to make the extra effort too. Yeah.
And with that, something we can all do to help our small businesses, vaccines is the next question. This question is from Elvia Lynn from Moraga, who has received her booster shot. She said, when will the state let us know whether the booster I just got is going to work for Omicron? Will I know by Christmas? And I probably mispronounced Omicron. I think everybody mispronounces it, but you know what I mean. So that's a great question. And first and foremost, I want to say that, our public health officials and our healthcare workers have been incredible through this pandemic, incredible in working in the hardest hit times of this pandemic, showing up to work, putting themselves at risk, and providing the healthcare and the information that each and every one of us needed. And I know that both the senator and I have relied on them, right? We are not healthcare experts, and they are. And so we've relied on them to tell us, what do we need to keep our communities safe? And they have been abundantly clear that getting vaccinated is one of the most important ways that we can protect ourselves, our community, and our family members. So thank you, Elvia, for getting your vaccine and your booster shot. They've now said that all grown-ups should be getting that booster shot. So thank you for going and doing that. And I urge everyone to listen to our health experts and do the same. Omicron is a work in progress. These new variants will come, and it will take time to understand how they're responding to the vaccines. And as soon as they know, I know they will tell you and tell our community so that we know what we need to do. But it's clear that the most important thing we can do is get vaccinated, wear those masks in situations where it keeps us safe, and continue all of those protocols that they said will keep us safe. And it's working. We're in a better place than we were prior to the vaccines, even with these variants. So we continue to remain cautious, but I'm cautiously optimistic because this community has stepped up. They're getting vaccinated. Our kids are getting vaccinated. As a mom of 3 that just became eligible, it's been a really exciting thing in my house to watch my kids get that protection. And I just want to thank all of you that have stepped up to do that, because it's so important. And, to the prior question, it's what's going to help our community get back to normal and help those small businesses. Senator?
Well, we have a question that's kind of a follow-up to what you've been saying. Mr. Williams from Moraga asks, what are you doing to get restaurants to enforce the vaccine requirements? And of course, that point is right on. I mean, we've seen unfortunately, some restaurants that aren't doing that. And we've also seen that the county has kind of made that a low priority. And that's not the right thing to do. If we're going to set these requirements based on what the health community says is the things that we need to do, we need to make sure that we enforce them. And so I've reached out to the County Board of Supervisors and their staffs, and I know that they had a meeting today or yesterday where they made it clear that they need better enforcement. We expect that. And we're going to set these rules. We want to make sure that everybody complies because it's all about public health.
Yeah. And enforcement is so key. We talked about it a little bit with smash and grab, but all of our laws should be enforced. All of our rules. I mean, that's what's a rule without enforcement. So it's a great question. And so another vaccine question, top of mind for many people. Catherine Mason asks, where do you each stand on COVID vaccine mandates for children to attend in-person learning? So this is something that is top of mind for parents, I know. And so thank you for asking. I think it's important to understand that that's not on the table right now. These do not have final approval. And the governor has said that that is what it will take for a vaccine mandate for children to be on the table. So, I think both of us have, like I said, listened to the experts, right? And I know that speaking for myself, that's what I will continue to do, is I will listen to the experts on what they believe will keep our communities safe. That being said, as I said, my 3 children have now been vaccinated, and I'm really excited for that because I think it provides them with extra protection. It provides our extended family and our community with extra protection. Each one of them handled it beautifully, and they're on their way to full vaccination status. And so I urge everyone to listen to the experts, to talk to your pediatricians, and, get the information you need to make a decision that will be right for your family. But every healthcare professional that I've spoken to has said that it is safe and that, it will help protect our children. And so I hope you will get that same information. And I want to commend our community because we're outpacing the state in vaccination for our 5 to 12-year-olds with an over 70% vaccination rate was something I saw for our local community, or 70% maybe, around that number. So let's keep it up. Let's get our community vaccinated because it really does lead to important protections and safety, and it will save lives.
And the Assemblywoman and I see this issue the same way. And I appreciate her articulate answer to it. And let me just add this, that it's not just about the kids. They can spread it to the elderly and immunocompromised people too. And, one of the most insidious parts of this COVID-19 is that half the people who have it don't know they have it. They're asymptomatic. But if they come in contact with those that are vulnerable, it could lead to hospitalization and death. So it's not just about the kids, it's about who the children interact with and the ability to transmit it, even if they're not affected by it. So there's more to this equation than the simple question of should the children, but I certainly agree with the Assemblywoman about listening and following the advice of our health experts. Okay, a question has come in about the recall process. Wasn't that fun that we went through this past September?
It's a great use of taxpayer dollars.
270 million, actually, 270 million was spent.
Think of all the things we could have done with that money.
So the question is, what are we doing to update the recall process? What measures can be pursued to avoid frivolous propositions, set a higher standard for recall attempts, expedite and speed up vote counting? I happen to be very involved in that issue. As I mentioned, chair of the Senate Elections Committee. I've been working with the chair of the Assembly Elections Committee together in holding hearings. We've held 2 hearings thus far to look at this issue. Are the thresholds too low? Signature requirements too low? Do we give too much time? California, another place where we lead the nation in the lowest signature requirement for recalls and the largest amount of time for people to collect signatures. So we're taking a close look at that. We held a hearing earlier this week about whether there should be a standard set to justify a recall. A lot of different opinions on different sides in that regard. One of the things that I dislike most about the recall process is the second ballot, that you could have somebody, if a person was recalled, actually take the office with not even a majority vote. We saw 60, 70 candidates that applied to hope lightning would strike in that regard. So we are taking a careful look at it in partnership with my leadership in the Senate and with the Assembly. We may come forward with some reforms. I would note this, that anything that we do come forward with will require a vote of the people. So it's not like the legislature is going to step in and say, this is what we want to do and done. It requires a change in the Constitution. And so we're trying to be very thoughtful about what change might be prudent and appropriate. And then we're going to give it to the people to say yes or no on. And that's where we are at the moment.
Thank you for your leadership in that. It's such important work, making sure that our system works and that it's just and it represents the will of the people. Here's a question on mental health, which, as you all know, is an issue that is near and dear to my heart. We had a couple questions on AB 98. Jason Allison asks, I'm interested in hearing more about the new alternative number to 911 for people with mental health emergencies. How will it work? And so the answer is, in July, you will be able to dial 988 in lieu of 911 if you or someone you love or a neighbor or a friend or someone is in mental health crisis. And you will get a trained professional at one of our suicide prevention hotlines here in California. So that person will be trained to handle a mental health crisis, which is a really important distinction from 911. Which those people are great at dispatching, but they are not great at handling someone in mental health crisis. They're not trained. And then if you are in the right place, you'll stay at 988. One of the things we're working towards is interoperability. So if you call 911 and you need that mental health care response, they'll be able to transfer you, and vice versa. If you call 988 and they think it's a real emergency and you need an ambulance or some other urgent help, they will transfer you to 911. And then but if you're in the right place, you'll stay at 988 and you'll have a trained professional support you in that moment, which we believe actually will help the vast majority of people. But some people, like today, that get a law enforcement response may need on-the-ground support in their home or wherever they are. And in that case, we want to be able to dispatch on-the-ground mental health crisis response teams, trained mental health professionals who can help people in crisis, communicate with them, de-escalate in the language they understand, and then provide stabilization services for those in need. It will be a warm handoff. It'll be done by our counties who are experts in this. And it's a really important shift from a law enforcement response to a healthcare response. But I'll also add, this is important in the context of our previous question about smash and grabs, because about 20% of the calls going to law enforcement right now are mental health crisis that they're not trained, nor do they want to respond to. If we can remove that 20% of the work they are doing on mental health care and put it into the mental health system, guess what? We have more time for law enforcement to be doing the job we want them to do, which is keep our communities safe. And so it is a way to provide more resources in the law enforcement safe space, as well as provide an appropriate response to those in mental health crisis. I'll add one last note, which is that 25% of those that get of officer-involved shootings are people in mental health crisis. So to the extent that we want to change that dynamic, this is an important shift, which will make a big difference. So it is a win-win-win all around, and I'm really excited for it. And we're going to continue to work on it, and we're hoping that it will be robust and ready for California soon. But the funding has started for the transition, and we're going to see more coming in January.
Assemblywoman, thank you for your leadership in this area. Really, really appreciate it. I know we're coming to the end of our hour. I thought I would do a lightning round with some questions that have come in really quickly. Larry asked about high-speed rail. I don't support it. Unfortunately, there's no financial plan to show that it could ever be completed between Los Angeles and San Francisco. So I think it is money that could be used for better things. Karen from Clayton asked about the Delta tunnels. I don't support it. I don't think it protects our environment. The Delta, the water supply for a number of cities that rely upon the freshwater content of the Delta. So I'm not there for the tunnels as they're currently proposed. And finally, Kenton, a number of people asked about Senate Bill 9 and 10. These are numbers, oh my God, there's so many numbers, but both of these bills deal with housing. We are in a housing crisis, but the shortcomings of SB 9, which I didn't support, it would take away local control, local public hearings on any kind of development of subdividing a lot in a neighborhood. So I wasn't able to support it. And SB 10 gave additional powers to local governments in the zoning space. So it wasn't a preemption by the state of local control. So it just provided opportunities and options for local leaders. And so I was okay with SB 10, but not on SB 9. That's my quick lightning round of Q&A, Assemblywoman. I don't know if you want to add in or go on to something else.
No, I agree with you 100% on the Delta tunnels, protecting our environment. Also, a huge expenditure for something that I don't know that there's a return on investment on. I also agree on high-speed rail, although I noticed that the question asked about why don't we just shift that money? We are limited in a couple ways on the money. Both part of it was a vote of the people. And as you heard on elections, when you guys vote for it, we're limited in how we change it. So that is one limitation on the high-speed rail money. The other is that some of it is coming from the federal government. It has been earmarked. But yes, both of us see that high-speed rail is really not working. It hasn't worked. We're spending a lot of money and seeing nothing in return. And one of the things that we've been really focused on is how can we put that money into local rails that will actually move people places. So for example, Valley Link in the Tri-Valley, is there a way to get some of that money into projects that we know will actually change communities and do important work? Because there are good rail projects out there. It's just not that one, especially as currently designed and implemented. Yeah, I don't know. I think we're out of time, but were there more lightning round questions?
There's a lot of questions.
There's a lot of questions. I said we weren't going to get to them all, but we were trying really hard.
It's a good sign. That means we have to come back and do this again.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I'm so grateful to hundreds of you that showed up and stuck with us and were engaged in this and asked these incredible questions. And to you, Senator, for being such a fun partner and for this fun evening, and to our staff who work so hard every day to provide the services to our constituents that each and every one of you need. And our contact is up there because you can call us if you need help with state resources. We're here to support you if you have an unemployment claim that you can't get paid out, or another state agency you need help with, or you just want to let us know what you think. We love to hear from you. So thanks for being here. Thank you, Senator, for doing this with me, and I'll let you close it out.
Well, thank you, Assemblywoman. I have so enjoyed doing this with you and your staff. We've worked very well together in Sacramento to fight for our district and the cities that we mutually represent. I just would say in closing, I know it's been a hard time for folks. This is not something that we've prepared for, a pandemic, but I appreciate how hard it has been for you and your family and friends, your businesses, students that are in school or remote learning, all these things that have kind of made it a difficult period that we're living through. But we're heading into the holiday season. I know we both would, it's nonpartisan. Have a great holiday season. If you've just finished Hanukkah, you're celebrating Christmas, certainly the new year ahead. We want to be helpful to you, as Assemblywoman has said. We're partners in this place of service, and we so appreciate the honor you've given us to represent you. So thank you so very much.